We've got a video here of a great trip that four of us took to Arizona, meeting Jordan here in Needles and crossing the Colorado and then taking a big loop over towards Flagstaff, down to the south through the forests, and just had a great time. Early on, I dropped my bike in a sand wash as we crossed into Arizona from California. And through Oatman, you can see the old mules here in town. It's a pretty popular little tourist town. And then we got off on some BLM roads up in the Hualapai mountain area. The park was actually closed due to fire damage, so we thought we'd be smart and go down this hill to basically a dry camp and then head south further to try to get out of that the next morning. Little did we know that this would continue to go down and get more rocky as we got down to the bottom of the valley. And you can see here, I dropped my bike again, and just really gnarly boulders and rock fields here. This is the hill. I'm off in the distance there. Couldn't quite get up. I had some traction control problems, and I finally figured that out after that hill. But we turned around and came back up the way we came, which was a bit of a challenge with some of the loose dust and dirt. And tried a couple other spurs here, and this spot right here is where we camped. So we went back up. James didn't have enough speed there, but we finally came out of that area and got back to where we came.
That way.
A little sand slide there, but made our way then back towards the east, some of the higher speed roads, and then just paralleled I-40 over towards the Williams area. Just a real nice section, and then we headed south on some roads. And some spots here turned into closed private property. We had to do some backtracking, but most of these fences were just ranch fences that we could open up and go through and have no problem. Jordan's here in front. I actually slid off the road right there. I didn't put that on the video, but it was a gnarly spill in the dust. And we got into some rocks. This whole trip was about a lot of rocky surfaces and pretty technical riding with these big 500-pound bikes with another 100 pounds of camping gear and a couple 100 pounds of us. We passed the Drake cement plant there and then got ourselves onto the Great Western Trail. This turned out to be an epic climb, pretty rocky cliff to go up here, and gave us some trouble. Jordan got off to assist. By this time, Sean here on his 800 GS had broken the bolt that holds his rear shock together, so he was being very careful, which is hard to do on a surface like this. There's James on his KTM, and Sean coming up the hill. So this is me on my bike sitting here taking video. James comes around and didn't have enough height on the low side and dropped it, so we all had our moments. So the video here, there's me. I've got video. Jordan's got video from his camera, and I got a couple shots from James and his GoPro. So I've got that all blended together with a bunch of photos. There's me. This is the Great Western Trail. There's Sean with his broken shock, doing quite well, and James coming up behind. So get an idea there on the side view of how steep and rocky this is. We made our way up to the top of this ridge where we finally got into a plateau and camped for the night. And it was the sign for Great Western Trail. Got to this plateau, and then Jordan took off and purchased a bolt up in Williams, Arizona for Sean's bike. We stayed at Wild Horse Campground. Just took it easy getting up here for Sean's benefit. Here's the White Horse, excuse me. Serviced the bike and took off the next morning after repairing that. That inset is the picture of his broken bolt. Really nice campsite. We got some wood nearby. There's Jordan getting a pull. Every morning at high elevation and cold temperatures, we could not get his bike started due to low compression. He basically just worn the bike out. So this was the last big ride. Stopped here in Parks, Arizona and got gas, and then made our way up to a really cool lava cave north of Williams.
Like, look at this. That seam in that rock.
Right.
This got formed many hundreds of thousands of years ago when Sunset Crater blew up, and some lava made its way underground and cooled, so it formed a bit of a semicircle cave. And you can hike in that for nearly a mile. It was nice and cold. We had all of our gear on, but there was ice on the ground. And this is May, so it was fairly warm. Came out of there and headed back towards the east, towards Mount Humphrey and Sunset Crater. Really nice forest roads around the mountain, up in the higher elevations. Probably 7,000 or 8,000 feet here, up in the birch or aspen trees.
I don't remember.
Just really pretty up in this area. There's, I think it's Mount Humphrey or Humphrey Mountain. Still some snow on it there. And then we make our way over to the Sunset Crater, which is black sand, starting right here. This is really cool riding. Loose sand, black, really coarse. It's a little tricky to ride on. I get a little sketchy here and stopped, and then got stuck because it's about a foot deep and soft, as you can see here by my rooster tail.
Uh-oh. Where'd you go? Oh, I was way up the hill over here.
What happened?
Jordan's got a flat.
Jordan had a little excursion off trail as well. I was ahead. James came and got me. We go back, and then Jordan ended up changing his flat tire here on the trail. And you see an inset photo here of him doing that.
Good.
Jordan had ridden the Sonora Rally the week before this and met us in Needles and left his other bike and gear and vehicle there, and then joined us for this ride. And we looped our way back and got to his vehicle. Here we had to stop for some spare tubes after Jordan's flat. Picked one up for me. There's Lake Mary, or Mary Lake, I guess it is. And then we stayed at Rock Ridge Campground near the Blue Ridge Reservoir. It was super cold that night. And then the next day we went into the reservoir area. This is really cool. And then made our way down through the forests along the ridge that goes along the center part of Arizona. This dam was built in the early 60s. You can see how low the water is.
Oh!
James was trying to knock that log in and had a direct hit on the first throw. It was pretty impressive. And so we just had a little walk, a little hike down to the dam, and then made our way south to some beautiful forest roads and ended up at a ridge, this ridge called the Mogollon Rim. It runs east and west through the state. It's a couple thousand feet elevation, just a really neat feature. And there's a ridge trail that goes all along this. It's a really neat ride. We camped most of the nights. We had a cabin one night just south of here on this night, I think it was, and no rain whatsoever, and very dry. Here's a nice stop. There's my bike, James, in the distance. There's Jordan, and now Sean is on my bike, the black and white, right there. And I'm riding his BMW. Just that short little test ride convinced him that he needed to have one. So since this ride, he's picked one up. I came around the corner and found these guys just starting a race. I think I surprised them, and it certainly surprised me to see that lineup coming down the hill. Fortunately, I wasn't going very fast. And we came up from the ridge road and made our way now to the south and made a big loop to get into this southern area south of the rim. This is a herd of elk. It's a little hard to see in the distance, but we spooked it and then came down to a much more interesting trail. This is a trail that's on the BDR, the Back Roads Discovery route. It's considered an expert road, but it's a neat trail. Jordan kept on saying, what a cool trail. Just a lot of different varied surfaces flying here. A lot of ridges, a lot of single track, double track. Just a beautiful cross country. Now we're going back to the west, up through Young, Arizona, and Hagler Creek. Just some neat backwoods areas. Another surprise for me. I was leading the whole way, so I get the crazy drivers and animals, and we stopped at Christopher Creek and rented a cabin, and there was a neat little restaurant nearby. Here's Jordan again, high altitude, no start. So we drained an extra battery, and I gave him a push down the hill. We made our way through some additional forest areas, a big wood chipper, and we ended up having breakfast in Payson at this little cafe, and Jordan had this awesome cinnamon roll, but that was the main civilization in the trip. And back on dirt, and now we're heading back up north. Got into some more rocky hills. Again, you can't really tell how steep this is. There's me. It's fairly steep, and these big bikes need a little speed to climb the hill. Everybody did great. By now, Sean's shock absorber's fixed, so that was all good. We got back up on the ridge road, and then made our way back up north to another section of the Back Roads Discovery route. You see my mirror almost smacked me in the forehead there. Got to be careful about that. A lot of hills through here, and then we made our way up to the BDR section, but it turned out to be quite rocky. You'll see that in just a second as we make our way back up north. Generally just took turns opening these gates. I led the trip for navigation, and we had tracks on our GPS on my phone, so we just had a selection of routes, and we modified that during the trip when things went wrong or broke something. And then we just discovered this little ride park, just came across it on the trail that I had marked. I had no idea it was there, so we buzzed around here for 10 or 15 minutes just screwing around. It was really fun. These bikes are loaded down, so they're not like able to jump too much, although Jordan was the exception to that in his hot rod KTM here. There he is. His suspension's able to handle that. Here's a typical fence as we open that up and take turns closing it. And then made our way farther up north and head back towards Flagstaff here, and we get into some really open terrain, and then it got very rocky starting in this section for probably 15-20 miles. So just slow going in second gear usually, just get a feel for this watching the bikes. Jordan had a camera that he spun around backwards. There's James behind him. It's kind of a cool view, and the camera falls off. And Sean comes by to pick it up, still running. The GoPros are pretty tough. James ended up having a loose bracket on his GPS system, so we had to fix that. So these types of trails just rattle everything to death. So we got tools to fix everything. I got a flat later. Jordan had that flat, so we ended up using most of our tools to fix that stuff. But fortunately, it wasn't rainy. There's James's GPS. This is a video from his bike. You can actually see it there up on top. We're making our way back up, and then we turn west, going over towards Sedona. And a snack here. We usually carry a few snacks, apples or power bars, or I carry a bag of tuna a lot of times. Jordan blew by me on this trail. He got bored and took off.
Amazing.
We found this hill called Schnebley Hill. That's Sedona at the bottom of that hill.
Wow. Holy cow.
Just incredible views down here. This is where the Jeep trails tour a lot of times, so we saw a couple of those coming up, but this was one of the more spectacular views into the Red Rock Canyon. This is late afternoon, so we're heading down to see if we can find a camp spot. We did not have a reservation tonight, so we were soon going to find out that was going to be a problem. But Jordan's enjoying the music, the road, and the scenery as he has his GoPro on. Here's one of the tour Jeeps trying to go around. They are quite slow. It's much faster on a motorcycle than a four-wheel vehicle. You can pick your line and go around a lot of the more severe bumps. We got into Sedona, went over to the grocery store and picked up some hot dogs and some camp supplies and tried every camp. That sign says full. But we ended up getting in there because they did have an extra spot, and it turned out to be a really nice camp. A lot of times they have one left over just in case, so we asked and they had one. Next morning, back up the switchbacks just south of Flagstaff and turned west again onto dirt. Some cows. And on this road, to see these tracks, I turned in and James ended up going past. There's James. Blew past with Sean. Jordan had to run them down. We had to go find them again, and got reconnected. I got a little lost here. That's why we're crossing. I missed a turn, this turn. And then we got into Hidden Valley and we stopped for a snack, and I managed to dump my helmet off the top of my bike.
How you guys
right
doing?
Here, down this ravine, way down that hill.
Yeah.
And that little blob was Jordan managed to get a gummy bear stuck on my handlebars when he picked the bike up for me. But then was the treat of the day.
There's a view.
Up Kasner Mountain Road. This is a power line access road, way up on the ridge. There's the name, Kasner Mountain.
Look at that.
Pretty spectacular.
Wow.
And I had checked with the Forest Service. This was open to motorcycles, so you can see it's in pretty good shape. And James did not disappoint. Anytime we're around rocks, James likes to check gravity and threw a couple boulders down the hill. It's pretty fun. Did that a few times. This ridge road just runs along the west side of Sedona and ends up going down some switchbacks and ends up dumping into an area just east of Jerome. That's where we had lunch. So this was a really spectacular view. You can just look at these pictures off both sides of this ridge. Just fantastic. Down some fairly steep switchbacks. These are tricky, very tight turn. You have to take the line on the outside and cut in to make sure you can make the turn. And I got a flat tire here. At least we found some shade and changed that. And then had some Mexican food in Jerome. And there's the old Jerome mining town. And made our way back up north on the road north, back up in the direction of Williams. But we spent the night at a wilderness camp on the Verde River.
Yeah. You guys good?
Some bikers have asked to see if everybody's okay. There's the river and had a nice camp spot. In this spot, Jordan's trying to make a dam.
Oh! James!
James is throwing rocks at this huge cow this bull that went by. And next morning we see the bull under that tree at a dead end. So he was just looking for a home, maybe some girls. James took off early that morning. We saw him leave. So now it's just Jordan, Sean, and me. And now we're on an old section of road that parallels I-40. This is an old Santa Fe Railroad bed. Sean found a spike there on the ground. This is all old railroad tracks that they pulled up. You see this cool old bridge, a little sketchy. And just parallel the highway to make it more interesting. All the way back, there's the highway itself. Got into some neat hills. You can see Sean doing a fantastic job climbing. These are pretty steep hills. And I navigate with my phone and my GPS. Saw some wild horses out here. That's always super cool. And we're pretty close to the highway. We ate lunch in Seligman, both directions, on the way out and the way back, and then ended up back in Needles on Friday night so Jordan could pack up and make his way back to Indiana with all his stuff. This is pretty cool. This is near Oatman, and we get down to Needles, and again the next morning the bike wouldn't start, so there's a shot of Jordan at breakfast. A fantastic trip.